Arizona, homeowner's best friend.
Farmer Greg, you had wanted to cover ordinances, and let's do that before we get any further ahead of it of ourselves and the talking points.
So I grew a lot of food in the front yard at the urban farm. And one of the things, so my degrees, I got 2 degrees from Arizona State University, one in 2004 and one in 2006, all in urban planning. I was studying urban planning when I was at Arizona State University. And so I was very cognizant of how the neighborhood would be impacted by wild food growing in it. Because there's been people in the past that have gotten into it with municipalities about, your front yard looks like not great and we want it to look great and, all that kind of stuff. So I was very cognizant of how the front yard looked. And one of the things that I did was in 2004, I actually put a citrus hedge right off of the street. Now, I couldn't build a fence on the front part of my property that was 6 feet tall, but I could plant trees. And I've seen people do this with oleanders as well. I can plant trees and use them as a hedge for privacy from the street. So I did that. And this is a concept in permaculture called edge. An edge means what can we do with the space along the edge of our property? Because a lot happens there. So I actually, in the front yard of the urban farm was 80 feet wide and about 40 feet deep in the front. And I had 38 fruit trees in the front yard. And when you walked into the front yard of the urban farm over there, you saw how open it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I was using those fruit trees. I had apples down the south side, along with peaches and grapes, citrus along the front and down the north side. And that created some nice privacy. But then I would also be cognizant of how they looked, so I wouldn't let them get out of control. I always managed the pruning on them nicely so they looked like a nicely pruned space. And the garden beds in the front yard, I always tended them a little more in the front yard than I did in the backyard. The backyard at the urban farm, that was free game for me just to let go wild. And it was really magical, some of the stuff that happened back there when I was doing that. So I just want to have everybody be cognizant that if you're going to do something like this in your front yard, you need to make sure that you're stepping inside of what's socially appropriate, culturally appropriate, make sure that it looks nice. Another thing I would suggest that you do is grow food and share it with your neighbors. Be that guy or that gal that has food that you just take and share. And one of the things that everybody on the street at the urban farm, there were 22 houses on my street. From the time I started my fruit tree program in 1999 until I left, every single house on that street got fruit trees from me. It was standard operating procedure for me. If people lived on my street, they got fruit trees. I just gave them to them. And so really working with the neighbors makes sure that this process is something that they love.
Rosie on the house, every Arizona homeowner's best friend.